As expected, the UAW expanded its strike today with 7,000 more workers in Lansing and Chicago walking off the job. Joining us now is Mike Strong, editor of Headlight.news, to break down the latest developments. Thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
First, I want to ask you, Stellantis was spared in this third round of strikes. Last time it was Ford. Stellantis now seems to be in the UAW's good graces or better graces. What do you make of that in the current state of negotiations?
That Stellantis came to them at the last minute was something that the union wanted. In fact, Sean Fain said as much. He was 30 minutes late to doing his Facebook Live because he got a last minute pitch from the folks at Stellantis. I haven't heard quite what it is yet, but they're looking to get, cost of living adjustments, shorter work weeks. So something must have give, or something had to give, and they gave it.
What do you make of, we mentioned last time it was Ford who seemed to be in good graces. This time Stellantis, GM, they've been hit a couple of times as these strikes continue and they escalate. Do you think things are just at somewhat of a standstill with GM?
It appears to be that way exactly. In fact, GM's put out multiple statements saying if they would just come back to us with a counteroffer, we could negotiate. But that hasn't happened yet. If I were the folks at GM, I'd be scratching my head and stomping my feet and maybe uttering a few four-letter words, wondering what they got to do to get a break.
President Biden was in town this week. It's said that he's been closely watching negotiations. How do you think his presence and kind of his pro-union stance is impacting things?
I don't think it had a huge impact when you look at the way people are divided these days. I'm sure there were people on that line that were couldn't have cared less if he was there. I don't think it puts a whole lot of pressure on the automakers, to be honest. And Fain himself said today that it won't be the president that gets us a deal. It's going to be, workers standing strong and walking out and hanging tough. I think it's a good photo op for the president, much like the other one was a good photo op for Trump, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact.
You said hanging tough. Both sides do seem to be digging in for a long battle. Who do you think blinks first? Who do you think settles the most?
I ultimately think that the automakers will move the most. I think there's a public perception that's turned against them a bit. The salaries that we're hearing, the salary increases we're hearing are closer to 40% than they are 10 or 15%, which were part of the initial proposals from what I've heard. The automakers have already moved a long way. They're well past the 20% increase mark, and I think they'll move towards 30%. Also, I think they'll give on things like tiers. I don't think they're going to give on a shorter work week. I think the unpredictability of automotive production right now with parts issues, materials issues, that's not something they're going to want to give up on. So I think in the end, the automakers are going to give more than the union, and I think it's in their best interest to do so, both from a perception standpoint as well as just a practical standpoint. They need to get back to the business of making cars, and every day that those people walk off, it's it's money out of their pockets.
Really quick question for you. I know it's a guess, but with you, it's an educated guess. We're in day 15. If you had to throw out a number, how long do you think this will play out?
Well, the last strike was 40 days. Seems like a nice round number, I guess. Then the strike was against GM, so maybe we'll sort of see a repeat. They'll pick on GM for 40 days and then come to an agreement. But I think ultimately it will be less than or shorter than the last strike. I think that most of what Sean Fain has said he will do, he's done. And that's a tough spot to negotiate against, but it's a good spot to negotiate from.
Mike Strong, editor of Headlight.news. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.